SUC.
Spiritual Seekers United in Community.
We are an inclusive community seeking to live out a more just and generous spirituality.
We believe spirituality isn't about doctrines and beliefs, demanding agreement,
but is about living fully and loving deeply.
What unites us is our desire to create community where all belong.
Where we're all safe to be ourselves.
Where we can question and ponder and seek meaningful lives.
We affirm that what matters most is who we are,
how we treat each other,
how we work to make our communities better. We welcome the entire human family.
All ages, all colors, all abilities.
All cultures, all genders, all sexualities.
All religions and traditions, or none.
So if you are curious and have come to see,
if you are tired and have come to rest,
if you are grateful and have come to share,
if you are journeying and have come to grow,
if you are wounded and have come to heal,
welcome.
Welcome.
If you are joyful and have come to shine,
welcome.
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 Welcome. Welcome home.
with gratitude for this place that we now sit, for the reality that this is ancient and beautiful land, part of our mother and our lover earth, sacred in its very existence. We're grateful for our place, our home, cared for by Indigenous peoples who've dwelled here, for the Cree people, the Pappas Chase First Nation, the Métis of Central Alberta, and many, many others. As we honor what's come before, we also live into better relationships with the land and all her people, committing to work daily toward an attitude of reconciliation and partnership. This candle that we light every day, that we gather, is one single flame. Yet it's connected in chemistry, in composition, with every light. The same might be true of us, each of us unique, yet connected with everyone, part of one circle, one community, one world. May this light remind us to shine in our own ways, just as we are. May we experience our connection to each other and the world. May we recognize our importance to light the corner of our lives, to let our light shine for ourselves and for others, and to experience our aliveness for who we each are, our value, our place in this circle, our love and dreams that brighten our days. May we light this light and draw our circle wide.
I'll be your candle on the water.
Today I want to share a story that talks about church. This is our church, and this is a place that we're celebrating today, that anyone can come here. Anyone is welcome here. It doesn't matter who you are. You can come. Would you like to hear this story now? It's called A Church for All, and it's by Gail E. Pittman. Here we go. We have to be quiet to listen to the story. Sunday waking. It's fine. Sunday waking. Day is breaking. Let's go to our church for all. Church bells ringing. Choir singing. Laughing voices. Candles glowing. Banners flowing. Come enter our church for all. Weak and healthy, neat and messy, poor and wealthy, plain and dressy. All embracing, spirit gracing, each one at our church for all. Bodies wiggling, mummies reading, children giggling, daddies pleading. Toddlers flailing, babies wailing. There's room at our church for all. Hands receiving, hands connecting. Hearts believing, hearts accepting. Feel the Spirit. Can you hear it? It's here at our church for all. That's a very short little story that is a wonderful picture of a church that welcomes everyone. And that's what we always should hope to do. We should be a church that welcomes everyone. Whether you're having a good day or a bad day, doesn't matter. You're welcome. And you know what? Doesn't matter who you are, who you love, what your family looks like. You're welcome. And we can create a church like that, not just stopping there.
Just like we're at a church.
That's exactly right. We're at a church, and we hope to do that too. But it's just practice. We create a church like this so that we can practice and create classes like this, schools like this, communities like this, a world like this. So it's fantastic that we can create a church like this, and we work hard to do it. And sometimes we do great, and sometimes maybe we mess up a little bit, and we have to fix it. But we do it so that we can practice and make a world for all. And so we can start here at our church, making sure everyone is welcome and belongs. Lots of rainbows today. Kid Spirit, preschool, all kinds of more rainbows to create and talk about and talk about that symbol and how it is a symbol of welcoming all and being who you are. So I invite you to your classes. Kid Spirit, youth, preschool, they're all happening. Have a good morning.
Possible.
This is a story about a homecoming in the first century. This is a story that one of the 4 gospel composites that form the Newer Testament of our scriptures gives us. It's from Luke's Gospel in the 4th chapter. When Jesus came back to Nazareth, where he'd been brought up, he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day because that was his custom. He stood up to read, and the reading was from the prophet Isaiah. He unrolled the scroll and read where it said, "Spirit is upon me. It has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. It has sent me to proclaim freedom to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let all the oppressed go free and proclaim the year of Jubilee." And he rolled up the scroll and he gave it back to the attendant and he sat down. And the eyes of all in the synagogue were fixed on him. And then he said to them, "Today, this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." And they spoke well of him. They were amazed at the gracious words that came from him, and they said to each other, "Isn't this Joseph's son?" And he said, "You'll likely quote a proverb to me. 'Doctor, cure yourself.' And you'll say, 'Do the things here that we've heard you were doing in Capernaum.'" And he said, "But no prophet is accepted in his hometown. You know, the truth is there were many widows in Israel at the time of the prophet Elijah, when there had been no rain for 3.5 years, and there was a severe famine in the land. But Elijah wasn't sent to feed any of them. He was sent to a widow in Sidon, an outsider. And there were a lot of lepers in Israel in the time that Elisha was the prophet. But none of them was cleansed except Naaman, the Syrian, the one who was also an outsider. And when they heard him say this, they were all filled with rage, and they got up and they drove him out of town, and they led him to the brow of the hill on which their town was built, hoping to hurl him off the cliff. And he managed to make his way through the midst of them, and he went on his way. In this story from the first century,
many lights light the way, many lights light the way,
many lights to guide the journey, many lights to shine the way, many lights to guide the journey, many lights to shine the way,
many lights to guide the journey, many lights to shine the way, many lights to guide the journey, many lights to shine the way. We burn with life's brightness, with thanks to yesterday, with shining inspiration, we light tomorrow's way. We burn with life's brightness, with thanks to yesterday, with shining inspiration, we light tomorrow's tomorrow's way. Many lights, many lights, making space for all to belong, is what's guiding us for so very long. These are the ones who go with us on the journey.
These are the friends beside us when it's stormy.
This is the place we come to learn of mercy, reaching out with our rays of light and love. We burn with life's brightness, with thanks to yesterday, with shining inspiration, we light tomorrow's way. Many lights to guide the journey, many lights to shine the way. Many lights to guide the journey, many lights to shine the way.
Reflecting lights love, reflecting lights peace, reflecting lights strength, that injustice may cease.
Many lights to guide the journey, many lights to shine the way. With shining inspiration, we light tomorrow's way.
Many lights
light the way.
This is a reading from Frank McEwen from his work Building Fences in High Wind, Poems of Longing. It's called Return. My wish for you is a homecoming in this life, a coming in out of the cold, a drying off of the icy rain's touch. In the holy reliquary of childhood memory, may you find there the unshakable truth of your preciousness. May you remember the cool and padded graces of your wet feet against the stone. In the middle of a long night, a single burning light serving as your peace, may you fold back the pocket holding your slights, your jilted times, your feelings of betrayal, and discover small diamonds there. Created from the crushed coal of your hates and your rage. May you taste resurrection without the need of dying for it. In the words of this contemporary poet.
May we find wisdom for our living. No voice to speak of kindness, no eyes to see the pain,
no heartbeat of compassion, no empathy remains.
How can a spirit blossom in times of dark despair? can change humanity by one touch alone. Love has no hands except our No truth to banish darkness, no candle in the night, no more illumination, no justice, no right. If we open our eyes, then we will realize that we are the lighthouse that can shine the light. Love has no hands except our own to reach a world that's yet unknown. This love can change humanity by one touch alone. Love has no hands except our own. Guiding the weary, bringing them home, giving them courage, 'cause they're not alone, never alone. Love has no hands except our own to reach a world that's yet unknown. This love can change humanity by one touch alone. Love has no hands except our own. No voice, no eyes, no hands except
Home is a loaded four-letter word. It can describe the place where we feel safe and secure, the sanctuary where we can be most truly ourselves among those we love most in the entire world. It can conjure up images like a cozy, intimate room filled with laughter and easy conversation beside a warm and inviting fire. And home can also describe the loneliest, emptiest place in the world where everyone withdraws into their darkest corners of themselves, where you feel like you're the walking dead, and you just try to keep your head down and hope for the best. Home can evoke memories of fear and shame, abuse and anger, threatening voices and ghostly secrets in a place where there's no safety. It can be the word that identifies where and with whom we live, in all its delights and dysfunction and dangers or shades in between. But it can be the word that describes where in our lives and with whatever people we feel most deeply ourselves and are called into our truest and best self. And maybe that's what speaks to me in that story we heard a few moments ago from the first century. It's a story about home that shines the spotlight on the many things that home is for us. We get the sense that Jesus has grown up in Nazareth and he's left home, which was probably somewhat unusual in his time and in his place. And he had built an identity for himself some distance away in the villages of Capernaum. And the story doesn't exactly tell us why he came home, whether he came home because of some crisis or a funeral or a wedding. But the story does place his homecoming in the context of a whole lot of expectations. The rumor mill had said their hometown boy was drawing some pretty big crowds over there around the Galilee, and he was getting quite a reputation for being a teacher and a healer. So when he showed up in the synagogue in Nazareth, there were likely a few whispers and a truckload of expectations. Somehow he was the reader for the day, and he must have done it well, because when he finished, they were all really taken with Joseph's son. Yes, not the one born of the Virgin Mary, the only begotten son of the Father. They didn't get to him for another 300 years. This was Joseph's son, the carpenter, hometown boy. When he sat down, every eye in the place was on him. He could have just breathed in that amazing welcome home, this adoring homecoming. But he blew it. If only he had remained silent. If only he had smiled and nodded and gone on to the next whistle stop. But somehow, and the story doesn't tell us how, Jesus knew there comes a time when silence isn't faithful. There are those for whom we have to raise our voice, and those for whom we must speak, and those with whom we must stand, and those for whom we must march, and those with whom we must cast our lot. So he told them it was really nice of them to welcome him home. But he hadn't come home to them. He had come home to them. To the ones who'd been left out. To the ones who were so painfully aware of their marginalization. To the ones who knew their difference. To the ones who were imprisoned within themselves or within their society or the systems of their society. The ones who were oppressed by their religion and their rabbis and their leaders and their emperor. Because he had come home to them, the ones that weren't in the synagogue, because they weren't welcome in the synagogue. They were excluded. He'd come to those who had to leave home, didn't have a place to call home, couldn't go home, weren't at home in their own skin, in their families, in their community. This commitment to inclusion, this commitment to radical hospitality got him run out of town. And it was one of the things that got him killed. Because he refused to live within the segregated lines that both the empire and his religious tradition had so carefully drawn. And he insisted on eating with the riffraff, you know, the ones they like to always call the tax collectors and sinners. Them. He touched lepers. He talked to women. He treated Samaritans, the heretics of his people, with dignity and respect. He accepted the wisdom of a Canaanite woman, his people's ancient ancestor, the ones they had almost wiped off the map. He accepted her wisdom. And somehow she persuaded him to get over his tribalism and his ethnocentricity and to pay attention to hurting Gentiles too. And he took children in his arms and he said we needed to be like them. Children weren't prized creatures in first century Roman Empire. They were social liabilities, a drain on scarce resources. And Jesus went home with guys like Zacchaeus, a despised and rejected collaborator of the Roman emperor. Over and over, everywhere he went, he refused to live within the boundaries prescribed by the purity laws and the social norms of his time. And over, he tried to erase those dividing lines and break down those dividing walls and heal those social divisions. He kept using the privilege of his gender and of his belonging and of his relationship as an insider in his culture, a male member of first century Jewish society, and he kept coming out as an ally for whoever was the them in his world. So you really got to love those bracelets and bumper stickers with those 4 letters, you know, WWJD, shorthand for what would Jesus do? There's a hell of a lot of good questions in the world. A lot of hard questions, a lot of nuanced questions. But this isn't one of them. It's a no-brainer, dead easy, an entirely rhetorical question. What would Jesus do? What did he always do? He'd say, welcome, join us, come along with us, welcome home. Because he was about building a movement for a more just and equal world. And it was always being built from the margins. It was always creating a counterculture of belonging from a vision of inclusion where no one was to be left out and no one was to be left behind. Spiritual communities that advertise all are welcome were a dime a dozen. When was the last time you walked by a temple or a mosque or a church or a synagogue that had a sign on the lawn that said, "Not all are welcome"? That's not the sign we hang out for the world to see. We advertise, all are welcome. I was serving a church in 1983 that had a big sign on the lawn that said, all are welcome. 2 years before that, I was welcomed into the vocation of ministry. The hometown crowd of my presbytery laid their hands on me when they ordained me, and the sign on the lawn at that church said, all are welcome. And they sent me from Toronto to Calgary to serve in a church with my name on the sign, actually only my initials, because it was the 1980s and we didn't want to tell the world there was a woman serving that church. So you had to come inside to find that out. But the sign on the lawn of that church said, all are welcome. And the sign on the lawn of the church where my presbytery conducted a formal hearing and a trial into my fitness for ministry, not because of my ethics and not because of my values and not because of my beliefs, but because of who and how I loved. There was a sign on that lawn, and it said, "All are welcome." Like so many other gay and lesbian, bisexual, trans clergy and parishioners, I came to be very wary of those words. Because either all didn't mean all, or welcome didn't mean what I thought it meant. And I came to know that for so many of us, whether it was sexual orientation, or gender identity, or gender, or race, or language, or economics, or class, there were so many categories that challenged the truth of that claim that all are welcome. But you know, to be a people who are gathered into community, seeking wisdom in the teachings of a first-century subversive, it's not really about being liberal or conservative. It's not really about being evangelical or mainline. It's not really about being right-wing or left-wing. If we seek wisdom for our living in the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth, we better be about radical hospitality. Because if we're going to follow a wisdom teacher like Jesus, it really is to be about building communities of belonging, not just places of welcome. Because it's about offering a homecoming in this life, about coming in out of the cold. It's about where we can discover the unshakable truth of our preciousness. It's about creating diamonds from the crushed coal of our hates and our rage. It's about welcoming each other home. It's about affirming and celebrating with one another our uniqueness and our diversity. It better be about what home can and should be, or we should lock our doors and take down that sign that says, "All are welcome." So that's what we signed on for 20 years ago when we became an affirming community. We signed on to restore trust in those three words. And we hung rainbows alongside them as a way of trying to say, we're a community that's committed to building an ark. A safe place where you can come in from the storm and find shelter and support. That ark tries to say, you're more than welcome. You belong. And it's not about regardless of your identity or irregardless of your identity. It's about we would be incomplete without you. You matter. You make a difference to us. We would be impoverished without you. We would be less than we could be. We would be incomplete. Many who dare to trust that rainbow painted on our signs that we hang on our doors, and who dare to trust that word affirming, tell us just how much it matters. Some will tell us it literally saved their lives. Some will tell us I have a family again. Some will tell us, this is the only place I can belong where I don't have to hide anything, where I can be celebrated instead of shamed or silenced or ignored. To be rooted in inclusivity is not about taking a vote. It's about being transformed by a commitment to radical hospitality. It's not something we did 20 years ago or we do once a year. It's about continuing day by day the movement inspired by the dream of building a kingdom, a beloved community, with the last coming first, and the least being most honored, and the excluded being the first to be included. And we've named this journey a commitment to being affirming, because it's not a moment in time. It's not a designation we achieve. It's an arc we keep building day after day, and week after week, and year after year, until we can all go home. In families that have been given to us and in families we've chosen. Until we can all be safe in whatever part of the world we want to live. Until we can all be beloved. Because we are the ones that have the capacity to turn home into what it's meant to be and what it can be at its best.
We welcome the entire human family.
All ages, all colors, all abilities.
All cultures, all genders, all sexualities.
All religions and traditions, or none.
So, if you are curious and have come to see, if you are tired and have come to rest,
if you are grateful and have come to share,
if you are journeying and have come to grow,
if you are wounded and have come to heal,
welcome.
Welcome.
If you are joyful and have come to shine,
welcome.
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 Welcome home.
I'm going to say something now about this next song as Rochelle comes up here. I won't have words afterwards, so I'll say now a huge thank you to Rochelle, who has helped this song you're about to hear, has helped to make this song what it is. Her beautiful voice, her beautiful spirit has helped me see in its words and its melody what I didn't see even as I was writing it. So a thank you to Rochelle. It's with love and appreciation that I dedicate this song to this community for its 20 years of being groundbreakers, allies, safe community, helping us all to affirm each other, to be the wonder of our true selves. This is We Are the Prism, We Are the Bow.
We are the wonder of our true selves. We are the freedom to love our land. We are the prison, we are the bone. We are the friends that stand, that march so proud. We are the wonder of our true selves. We are the freedom to love our land.
We are stronger together. We are more together than we could ever be without one another. We need each of the many lights we bring. And we go to shine this light of inclusion, into all the places where lives depend on it. And we go in the strength of who we are together.